Hello, and welcome back to Crit and Crit. I'm Scint,
I'm Axion.
and we are continuing our discussion of William Shakespeare's The Tragedy of King Lear while we play through Final Fantasy IX. And, I do think it's really appropriate that we've started with King Lear for this because, can you honestly describe Zidane as anything other than, like, a fool?
I mean, he's one of the more roguish heroes that Final Fantasy has given to us. So, he has some of that fool energy.
Yeah, and I can mean, like, in terms... I don't mean necessarily fool as in, ha, you silly twit making bad choices. I mean kind of just, like, somewhere between court jester and, like, the, tarot symbolism.
I was about to say, I thought you were going for tarot fool.
Somewhere around there, but I do think that that ties in with the court jester, which is honestly really critical to the entire plot of King Lear, so we can talk about that as well. It's a really common motif you see in basically anything that attempts to pretend it's a period piece with the Renaissance, even if it's not. Like, it's such an ingrained part of, like, what we picture a medieval or Renaissance court to be like. They've got a jester there. And that, I believe, carried on well into the heyday of the Commedia dell'arte, because that's exactly what the Harlequin or Arlecchino character is. Any of the Zani would basically be the comedic fool actors in the play. Well, that didn't last.
VV strong.
So yeah, in short, the Jester is the comic relief of the royal court. That puts it about as simply as I possibly can, and as, like, everything put simply, is a vast oversimplification of the role.
Yep. I knew I've missed one.
So everybody basically knows what a jester looks like. They have a very distinct appearance. During the post-classical Renaissance eras, I am pulling from Wikipedia on this, which is a very quick reference. They were thought to have worn brightly colored clothes and eccentric hats in a motley pattern. So usually they kind of diamondy checkerboard sort of. You could tell.
The stereotypical image of what we have come to associate with jester or fool.
Yep. They also have something known as the Jester's Privilege, which also ties in with how they dress, because the reason they have the cap like that, the pointy hat with the bells on it, it's kind of meant to evoke the image of a crown. And they also carry their own little mock scepter with them. Mm-hmm. So they're basically here like, hey, look, I am going to mock the king. It is my job. The Jester's Privilege is their ability to talk about and mock people freely without repercussions. It's literally their job. So this was actually like a uniform, because other people in, lands where free speech is not a thing, you go straight to jail, the stocks, maybe even the gallows, if you talk smack about the wrong person.
Do not pass go, do not collect 200 gold.
So yeah, this is a long-standing thing. There are numerous... I don't know. Maybe. I still hear the music.
Well, no, it minimizes just fine. Anyway, carry on with your thought.
Anyway, there are a number of jesters written down throughout history. Many of the Tudors had them. Henry VIII had one named Will Somers, so on and so forth. Apparently they were also used as part of psychological warfare. They would ride in front of the troops, mock the enemy, and sometimes even, there we go, serve as messengers. So the jester is not just, haha, I make the joke. They do a lot of actually fairly important functions. So it's no surprise that one of the more important characters, at least in the early part of Lear, is the Fool. The Fool also offers some opportunity for ironic symbolism, as we see a lot. The one that comes to mind mostly as a counterpart would be the Blind Seer. I can't see what you see, but I can see more than you could ever see.
Right.
And similarly, we have the idea of the Wise Fool, which leans heavily into tarot.
Or at least
I am absolutely looking up because I'm still not convinced you can't play poker with a tarot deck. Don't at me, I'm being silly. But I don't know. I don't know much about tarot, and I want to get this accurate because the symbolism does get mentioned a lot. All right. On the Fool card, a young man stands on the edge of a cliff without a care in the world as he sets out on a new adventure. This is the card of basically. It has no specific place. It works like an ace, for lack of a better way to put it, because it can be either at the beginning or end of the major arcana. It does whatever it needs to. Mm-hmm. But specifically, it represents, according to the site I have found, beginnings, innocence, spontaneity, and a free spirit. If reversed, holding back, recklessness, and risk-taking. So, not the fool as in an idiot, but a fool as in an innocent and potentially reckless young person about to start something. Which often holds true in a lot of these stories in which they are referenced. It's not a bad piece of symbolism.
I'm going on an adventure!
Yep. But let's go ahead and look back at Lear. We kind of have two characters to look at with regard to our Wise Fool situation, and I would argue that in both cases they are setting out on a journey. Lear's Fool is going with him into exile, while Edgar, as Tom of Bedlam, is starting a new adventure as a fugitive because his treacherous brother, who everybody could tell was treacherous except the people who related to him, I wonder what this says about family, has a price on his head. So yeah, they're both definitely about to start on a journey. It's a beginning, and you kind of need to have some degree of spontaneity to work with that. There's definitely innocence involved as well with regard to Edgar, because it's the nice way to say, how did you not notice your brother is constantly wringing his hands and muttering scheme in the background?
Okay, I think I know what the problem is. So, to kind of explain what's going on with the game for a moment, I downloaded some of the minor mods for the game to improve some of the quality of play during the story. And one of those is a high-definition graphics pack for some of the backgrounds and stuff. And apparently my computer can't handle it. So I will be disabling that mod between this and the next episode.
Okay, well, good to know.
Anyway, so, which of our fools should we begin with?
I think the more obvious one is Lear's Fool, just because he actively uses the Jester's privilege. Like, his entire function is the Jester's privilege. Lear did a dumb. The Fool wastes no words in telling him repeatedly and at length that he did a dumb.
The fact that he gets away with it is basically the only calling out that Lear really gets throughout the entire story until he starts coming around to, oh, maybe I did screw up.
Yeah, and that's exactly why I bring up the Jester's privilege. Anybody else would say that to Lear, and we've seen what happens. Poor Kent gets exiled, Cordelia gets disowned. The Fool, however, yeah, Fool, you always have the funniest thing to say. That's what he does. Up to the point of, Fool turns to Kent, Sir, you were best take my coxcomb. Meaning his fool's cap. You're being silly. He does this to so many people. It's literally his entire purpose is to show Lear that, yeah, you done screwed yourself over. You keep wanting to be treated like a king, but you just gave that up. You're not the king anymore. You need to learn that because you can't keep behaving like this. But Lear doesn't learn. Not until it's too late.
And we're off.
Yep. So, specifically, why this fellow has banished two of his daughters, and did the third a blessing against his will. If thou follow him, thou must needs wear my coxcomb. How now, nuncle, would I had 2 coxcombs and 2 daughters? Why, my boy? If I gave them all my living, I'd keep my coxcombs myself. There's mine. So beg another of thy daughters. So, yeah, you gave everything you had, every income, everything you could have made a living off of, away to 2 daughters who barely tolerate you. That's kind of on you, my friend. You don't get to come back from that. You've made it very clear that this was the decision that you wanted to make, even after everybody around you did the whole dungeon master asks you, are you sure you want to do that thing? But Lear is apparently a noob at D&D. He did not look up when he entered the room.
I actually just stole some ore. Here you go.
Oh, he's happy and cute.
And that begins a long quest that will take us throughout most of the game to complete. Oh, and people learned a bunch of abilities. Awesome!
Yay!
Which means we might be able to mess with equipment. You're not done yet.
Yeah, and again, dost thou call me fool, boy? All thy other titles thou hast given away. That thou wast born with. No one else, as we've said, would be able to get away with saying this sort of stuff to Lear and living to tell the tale. That said, we know that the fool does not survive the play, though we don't really make it clear what specifically happened. Everything I have seen suggests that the roles of the fool and Cordelia were played by the same actor, so when Cordelia comes back into the play, the fool has to go away for some reason, so he just vanishes, and also Tom of Bedlam takes up the job of being the crazy person after that.
Yep. So this seems like a reasonable point to transition over to talking about Tom / Edgar. So the primary difference between the two is that the fool is doing this as a job. This is what he is supposed to do. This is his employment. This is his purpose for being here. He's just a guy collecting a paycheck. And by extent, relying on Lear's political power to keep him somewhat secure, which unfortunately does not work out for him in the long run. Edgar, on the other hand, is playing a role to protect his identity as a fugitive.
Yep, and honestly, him picking up this disguise is an entire scene. Which is probably more accurate to say, the scene barely counts as a scene, it's a monologue. I heard myself proclaimed, and by the happy hollow of a tree escaped the hunt. No port is free, no place that guard, and most unusual vigilance does not attend my taking. Whilst I may escape, I will preserve myself, and am bethought to take the basest and most poorest shape that ever penury and contempt of man brought near to beast. My face all grime with filth, blanket my loins, elf all my hairs in knots, and with presented nakedness outface the winds and persecutions of the sky. The country gives me proof and precedent of Bedlam beggars who with roaring voices striking their numbed and mortified arms, pins, wooden pricks, nails, sprigs of rosemary, and with this horrible object from low farms, poor pelting villages, sheepcotes and mills, sometime with lunatic bands, sometimes with prayers, enforce their charity. Poor Twirligod, poor Tom. That's something yet. Edgar, I nothing am. So, yeah, just... there is nowhere safe for Edgar. No one will suspect me as a beggar. That's all it comes down to. So he actually takes on the role of Tom of Bedlam, the mad wanderer, because he feels that he will be beneath notice, which is often, I think, how comedy works. The Jester is able to, sometimes get some good advice into the king with his jokes, because people are less guarded when they're here to laugh. It's why comedians and satirists usually do their jobs so effectively. You lower your audience's guard by making jokes and silly things, and then you punch them in the face with your actual point. Hello, Terry Pratchett, by the way.
Oh, look, there's exactly 4 beds in the first inn we encounter. Just like there's exactly 4 places in the party.
Look, if they didn't do that, and they just had like one placeholder bed, there would be a completely different complaint available.
Either that, or they'd need to do the Chrono Trigger thing, or not Chrono Trigger, earlier FF thing of keeping the entire party in your pocket. Anyway, so Tom declares himself a madman because madmen can do and say pretty much anything they want, and everybody just ignores them because they're, oh, you're a homeless, crazy, poor person. You are background information. You are scenery.
Yep. So that, I do think, also ties into things, because how often in fiction do you see the idea of, we can slip somebody in as a spy if we let them pose as a servant or a beggar, because the people in power do not care about anyone below a certain rank. So it's basically showing that, like, oftentimes those in the upper classes, such as Lear, are very out of touch with reality, so you get the down-to-earth wisdom of somebody who is not of that strata from a supposedly unexpected place. Whereas, most people of that class would be like, this is literally just common sense, but whatever, King. Go yell at the clouds. You do that.
This is, unfortunately, something that is still fairly commonplace today.
Yep.
People who are down on their luck, the homeless, travelers,
essential workers.
Yeah, I was working my way up there. People who do menial jobs like cleaning, caretaking, landscape work, as you said, essential workers of all kinds. These people are just often considered in the background of society until basically ignored or acknowledged as little as absolutely necessary until something goes wrong that they are considered to blame for.
Yep. And we'll talk about this when we actually get to that book, but always comes to mind for me, during one of the parties in The Great Gatsby, there is it's a throwaway line. A background character herself is described as grabbing a drink from the air. Not meaning she's not actually conjuring it, but no one in the narration is paying any attention to the actual help who are walking around with serving trays of drinks. It's just like the drinks appeared from the air, we grab them, we get sloshed, whatever. So it's always stuck with me because it really does underscore the idea of the working class is invisible until we need to blame them, as you just said. So, yeah.
Yep, because as much as these kinds of people tend to be ignored, that obliviousness ends the instant that somebody is upset and needs a target to yell at.
Yep.
Or inflict violence upon.
Yep. And the fool does get yelled at a fair bit, because Lear absolutely loses his tenuous grasp on sanity. But yeah, it's just kind of a thing. The Fool represents the knowledge that the king needs someone to take him to task, but there has to be a special job made because otherwise everybody would be lecturing the king about things, and he can't handle that because it's not like he's, had a lifetime to grow up or anything. But yeah, there is wisdom to be found in often unexpected places if you are, like the king, very laser focused on only the things that you specifically care about and the people who are close to your equal in rank. Which is its own problem, but there you go. The Wise Fool. Anything else you want to add?
I don't really think there is much I can add. That's pretty... Yeah, it's pretty common. Or, not common. Sorry, I got distracted by the dialogue. It's pretty much thoroughly covered. I don't really think there's much more I could add.
Alright, in that case... okay, we shall see you next time.
Yep, see y'all then.